So we are live. Hello and welcome to the weekly Akashic Soul Wisdom Show with me, Natasha Harris, your host, here every week at 4 p.m. UK time on Wednesdays. And today I'm really super excited to be introducing you to Ali Krasner, who is going to be talking about your sensitivity is your superpower. Now, this is going to be a really hot topic. So I can't wait to get into this. But for those of you that don't know me or new to my show, welcome. We're delighted that you're joining us here today. I work with soul-inspired leaders and conscious business owners to really support them to elevate and take their business to the next level of impact and leadership. I work with the wisdom of the Akashic Records, so a really beautiful spiritual way to work with business, bringing business into the new paradigm, into shifting the consciousness around how we do business. And I'm just really excited about this because so many of us are, as business owners, as business entrepreneurs, really do struggle with the whole introvert aspect of our personalities and how we can actually still show up and do business in this. So I'm really excited that you are here with me today, Ali, to really talk into this, because I think it's going to benefit loads of people. I can see a couple of people jumping on, so give us a wave, give us a heart, say hello, and if you're watching the replay, do type #replay, and please do leave us a comment, tag Ali and I with any questions you have. We would be delighted to come and answer them for you after the show. So Ali, over to you. Would you please introduce yourself and let people know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi, everybody. Hi, Natasha. Thanks so much for having me on the show today. I'm delighted to be here as well. And I know the struggle is real because I'm also an introvert, so I will talk about that in just a bit. An introvert and an actor. So if I can do it, you can do it as well. So I'm actually originally from the States, and I studied theater over there in New York, and then I came here to France, where I am now. And I've been here for about 9 years, which is crazy to think. Time goes by so fast. And I've actually become a French citizen in that time. So I guess I could say that I'm French American. And I was doing my acting thing, and then the pandemic hit. So I kind of had to go off in a different direction. And we'll speak a little bit about, what direction I went off in. And that has to do with helping women sort of step into their power, put themselves out there with confidence, grace, and presence using acting techniques. So acting techniques for non-actors. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today.
Great. That's so exciting. And I just get goosebumps as you talk about like this kind of like confidence, grace. What a beautiful, powerful word, and presence, and we can do that, and to really bring in certain skills, because often, especially I remember when I was, first starting out in my business, and, my coach at the time was like, get out on Facebook Live. And I was like, you have to be kidding me. Like, it was my worst nightmare. And, it was excruciating to the point of like really, not quite, but almost really wanting to be vomit.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
really getting myself so anxious about it. So I do, like, I wouldn't say I'm an introvert. I probably flip between the two. Like, I'm an extrovert and I'm a bit of an introvert, but I do recognize those introvert tendencies. But even someone who does like to be a little bit more out there, it's anxiety inducing. So I love those words: confidence, grace, and presence. Beautiful.
Totally. And I did start with introverts, but you're totally right that it's not black and white. Some people identify as introverts, and even some people who identify as extroverts and who love going out and talking to people don't necessarily feel comfortable going on video or getting up in front of a crowd, right? It's a hard thing to do no matter what our personality type.
Yeah, absolutely. I can kind of see myself like in those early days, like being a bit extroverted, but then like when it came to being out there and really visible and vulnerable, that I literally put on my introvert shell. I was like, I'd rather hide. I'd rather go within and really just like extract myself from this. So tell us a little bit, and you said, you mentioned about the pandemic and stuff, but tell us a little bit about that journey of transition, going from being an actor, because I think that's truly fascinating, and really, switching things around in such a short space of time to really recognize how you can help women in this area. So tell us a little bit about what happened there for you.
Yeah, sure. So here in France, basically the lockdown was really quite strict. for maybe a year or so, and for about 6 months or so, the theaters were completely closed. And even now, they've just recently opened up, and you have a limit for how many people can come, right? They can't be full, et cetera, et cetera. So I said to myself, okay, this is not working out, but I'm not going to just kind of give up, right? So I've got to use this time wisely. I've got to figure out something else, something constructive that I can do with these skills. So basically, being stuck at home, what I did was I signed myself up for a business coaching program, and I said, I don't know exactly where this is going to lead me, but I'm going to give it a go, right? And something else I do actually is that I'm a yoga teacher. So I actually thought that maybe I was going to do something to do with yoga in the beginning. Yeah. And then in a mastermind that I was doing in the business coaching program, somebody actually said to me, well, you have all these acting skills, like, why not put them to use? And I thought, why not? I didn't know how it was going to play out, sort of in the online space, right? Because acting is so much about connecting to other people. And I thought, is that really possible with Zoom and all of that? But I thought, this is kind of a phase of experimentation. Why not try?
Yeah.
Because that's really, I love yoga, but acting is really my first passion. I've been doing it since I was a little kid. So I gave it a go. I did some test workshops with some ladies who put themselves out there, did silly things. We did acting games, just to sort of, get people to let go a little bit, let go of their inhibitions, play, all that good stuff. And to my surprise, it actually worked really well. Of course, there are some things that don't translate inevitably, but there are a lot of things that really can be done on Zoom. And so that's kind of how the whole thing started, I guess. And the women who are looking to do it, I mean, they're looking to do it for kind of a myriad of reasons. Like you said, it could be because they have businesses and they want to go live. It could be because they're afraid to make presentations at work, or they want to start a YouTube channel. There's so many opportunities out there that we've sort of shut ourselves out from because we're afraid of the unknown. And that's what I really don't want women to do, right? To sort of limit themselves. Yeah.
And that's it, isn't it? It's like we don't know what we don't know yet, and we have to give things a go to see. And I love it that you said that. You said, well, just give it a go and see where it takes me. And you didn't know how it would play out. And that's the beauty of something. And I really do believe, and this is the work that I do with my clients and the clients that I work with, it's around marrying that passion of what we love to do, and then allowing the business idea to evolve from that space. And where we meet desire with a little bit of uncertainty and a little bit of giving it a go, the magic really can take place in that. I think the desire part is absolutely essential for that. I love what you've done and how have done that. So, oh gosh, really, really beautiful. So obviously now you are working with clients. I know you do group work and you have a community, but like, you've got some tips and tools for us. Let's start there first. Let's go with our first tip that you want to share with the community here.
Sure. So we'll sort of go off the title of this talk, right? Your sensitivity is your superpower. So I wanted to first off kind of explain what I mean by that, because people who are introverts tend to think of their introversion as sort of an impediment or something that's stopping them from putting themselves out there. And I suppose it can be in a sense. But being an introvert, the classic definition is really just that you need more time alone to recharge and more time to think before you speak. So these aren't necessarily bad things, right? Because when we're quiet in a conversation, we're listening to the other person. That's when we can really understand where they're coming from at a deep level, that active listening, and really be able to respond something that touches them, that reaches them. Because just being loud or talking a lot, it doesn't necessarily make you an engaging speaker, does it? It doesn't necessarily.
Oh my God, no.
Across. So really that active listening, that empathy is so, so important. And often people who are introverts are highly sensitive as well. And they see that as another sort of fault. But once again, radical empathy, feeling the room, feeling when people are getting your message, when they're not, when you need to shift and pivot. It's actually really a skill, right? And like you said, the vulnerability piece, that's what makes us afraid. You don't want to be vulnerable in public. But let's sort of shift that around, because vulnerability can actually also be a strength, right?
Yeah.
So think about like the talks that you've watched. Like, do you relate more to somebody who's like perfectly polished and sounds like they've given this speech, like the exact same speech 50 times? Or do you relate to somebody who maybe stumbles over a couple of words and maybe has to explain things a couple of times, but they seem more sort of real? And the speech seems to be more for you personally than just a general thing.
Yeah.
Right. So actually showing that you're a person and a human, it's not a bad thing at all, is it?
No, no, after all, we are a real person and we are human, and we have to really allow ourselves to lean into that. You know, I really like what you've just said is really powerful in itself, because I think we forget, we know it, like, but we forget when we're in that moment that actually we can use these things as our superpower. You know, there is great strength in vulnerability, and there is great strength. And like, I love what you said in like needing more time as an introvert before speaking, because actually what that does is allows for me, what I feel when I slow down is to connect to my heart. Yes. And then immediately I become more authentic. I start speaking rather than thinking and being in my headspace. I feel like I am being more authentic and, you know, allowing myself to be vulnerable. And actually I trip over myself less and less the slower I am. So it's okay. And I think that actually just remembering that one thing, to slow down before we respond, before we speak, is hugely powerful in itself. I think it creates a connection.
Yeah, definitely. Right. And I'm definitely against the whole speaking just to speak, right? Or speaking just to kind of fill a silence. But yeah, really take that time. And it is a good thing to do as well if you're a little bit nervous, right? Just to kind of slow down and breathe a little bit, which might lead us into our second tip.
Yes.
Yes. So this tip is for your audience in particular, although it could be for anybody, because I assume that if they're in your community, they identify as spiritual, or they're interested in spirituality in one way or another. And I do have something reassuring to tell you all, that if you practice yoga, if you practice meditation, any sort of spiritual presence practice, you're already halfway there in a sense, right? Because being on stage or being in front of a camera, it is about sort of filtering out the noise. If there's a dog barking, or if there's your kid yelling, or I don't know what, right? It's the same thing, but on another level, right? If you're in front of an audience, that's sort of your external stimuli that you want to sort of filter out. You say, I'm here, I'm present, I'm going to do my thing. It's that one-pointed focus, right? And we can sort of nurture and foster that through doing meditation, through embodiment practices such as yoga. And that's where the acting and yoga kind of meet, right? Because in a sense, the body is the instrument for both. And we're looking to be in that mind-body connection, because you can tell when you watch a movie or when you see somebody speaking on stage and they seem kind of robotic, right? It's because the body and the sort of mind are not really connected. So we can see these things even if we don't necessarily know what they are.
Yeah, we know it, don't we?
Yeah,
we really do. It's like, it's so obvious, and it's so like but we don't know, perhaps, as you say, is like what that is, but we know that there's a lack of connection, a lack of that empathy coming from that person, that sense of vulnerability that we find it difficult to lean into. So yeah, totally. Yeah, if we just, I guess, watch what we're watching, like when we're watching something, to really notice what we like about something, and what we don't as well.
Definitely. And even spiritual, I don't know if I would call it spiritual hacks, but they could be, right? Things like working on your limiting beliefs, your negative thought patterns, because that's often what makes us so nervous before we get on camera. Right? We start with like one little negative thought, and then it kind of spirals and spirals and spirals and spirals until it's like this huge weight, and we feel super overwhelmed. So just sort of stopping negative thoughts, questioning limiting beliefs, that can help us in all areas of life, including going on camera, on stage as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think that there's, you know, especially when I used to have so much nerves around, showing up, I would sit and I would just be quiet, and I would try to quieten my mind down to those negative spiraling thoughts, because otherwise I think, there'd be no point. And I remember even thinking, if I don't show up today, no one will notice, it'll be fine. But, there's that knowing as well, I'm going to show up. But there's this, like, also this voice going, oh, you know what, no one will notice if you're not there. And it's like how we show up anyway, and in spite of all these things, because it is normal, I guess, isn't it? It's like, we all have this, no matter how confident we are. I guess, as an actor, you must probably know other actors that, despite all the confidence in the world outwardly, that they still get the nerves.
Oh yeah, of course. And I mean, I think it's completely normal. I mean, that's the biological response, right? We all know the fight, flight, or freeze response.
Yeah.
When the brain senses that it's in danger, even if it's no longer real physical danger and you're no longer being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, it will react, right? So you have, the heartbeat that quickens, you have like the stomach that turns, you have the breathing that's a little more shallow. That's a natural reaction. So it's basically getting used to it, normalizing it, doing it, seeing that when you do it, the world doesn't end, right? And using these little techniques, these breathing techniques, these techniques working with negative thoughts, that it'll get easier and easier over time. You'll never like not be scared at all, right? Because if you're invested in something, if it has stakes for you, the body's going to react.
Yeah.
But it's about knowing how to better manage those reactions with time.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that showing up, is there one particular thing that you kind of like, is the one thing, like if you were to give one sort of tip around what to do in those situations where you do feel that fight and flight mode kicking in, what would be your one quick go-to around that? Or does it really not?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, for example, is an exercise that therapists sometimes give to people with anxiety, which I know is completely different, not the same thing as a medical condition, but you can also use this when you're sort of feeling stage fright, is to notice 3 objects in the room. So not the audience, right? Because that's emotionally charged. So anything that's not emotionally charged that you can use as sort of a grounding tool, right? So I can do it right now. I can say, okay, here's a cup of water that's almost empty. Here's a watch. Here's a computer screen, right? And it just kind of brings you down. And because you're focusing on things that are not emotionally charged, right, the body is just going to relax a little bit. And you identify these things as sort of safe, right? So you could do more than 3. 3 is just the classic example. You could have a look around the room. The idea is to focus on things that calm you and not on things that are just going to sort of upset you even more.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I've not used that one, but I can see how that can really help, because you're just bringing your attention away from whatever your mind chatter is kicking out about.
Exactly.
And you can really just focus on things that are really solid and there and real, rather than the mind chatter. So that really that feels like a really easy thing to do, just to notice 3 things and to really help calm. I can really see and experience how that works. Is there another one? I like that one.
Basically, you can do anything that'll kind of take your attention off of these spiraling thoughts. So for example, I also love reading fiction. So I usually have like my Kindle in my purse. So if you're sitting backstage waiting to go on stage, just grab something else, right? Anything that takes your attention off of sort of that panic and puts it into a safe space. So you can find sort of whatever practice works for you in that regard, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's really useful as well, actually, because I think the go-to thing for a lot of us, and I know that what I teach is around bringing your attention to your breath and, doing those more meditative, introspective reflections, rather than actually putting yourself and your attention outside on something. Actually, I can see that that's very different. And the benefit of that. And so that's really useful. That's really useful for me, actually. I really, really like that, because it's like, how do we quieten the mind? Obviously, sometimes I think, especially if we are in the spiritual community, we think that the meditation or the breath work or something that's inwardly reflective would be more beneficial. But I can really see how actually focusing on something outward can actually be just a different way to look at things.
Yeah, it's just a matter of personal preference, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people have trouble meditating and they just panic more if you tell them to meditate, or some people really like meditating. Yeah, it just depends on what works for you, for sure.
Yeah, no, I like the way that you could, like, you've kind of like switched that around a little bit. Lovely. Thank you for those. I've made a note of them. I will come back to those for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and you have a third tip as well, which I'm a real fan of.
Yes. The last and maybe the most important one is to have fun, which seems maybe a little bit silly or childish. But why torture yourself, right? If you have this opportunity, you have a platform, you have people who are ready to listen to you, why not take advantage of the opportunity? Why not really step into your light, right? And one of the things that I teach in my classes, and this is so important in acting, is a sense of play, right? A sort of sense of beginner's mind, being open to possibilities. I mean, when you think about kids, for example, like let's say that I'm playing a princess, right? The other kids that are playing with me are just like, they're not like, do you have experience as a princess? Do you have a diploma? Are you really qualified to talk about this? Are you wearing the right outfit? You know, no, they're just like, they believe it, right? And basically, if you believe it, your audience will believe it, right? Yeah. That's kind of the important thing. And this sense of play just allows us to open up to the imagination, the beginner's mind, to think of possibilities that wouldn't necessarily be the first things that would come to mind. And there's actually a study on this, that when you're learning things, if you learn in sort of the traditional rote way, it takes about 400 repetitions to learn something new, whereas if you learn something through play, it takes about 40 repetitions.
Oh, so wow.
This is also connected to embodiment, right? Putting something in the body, experiencing it viscerally is completely different than just passively reading it, right? It's like riding a bike. I often use the analogy of riding a bike for acting, or you can use the analogy of anything that's physical, right? If I read a book about riding a bike, I might learn something, but I won't actually be able to ride the bike.
No, that's absolutely.
You have to do it. Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important to practice, and that's why I provide women this sort of safe space to put themselves out there rather, and practice without being judged, so that they feel kind of then that they can move it up to the next level and put themselves out there.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? I mean, like I've always said, I've always been somebody who learns through practice and putting things out there. I've never been any good at learning things parrot fashion. Sometimes I think I remember something and I'm like 2 seconds later I was like, what was that thing? And I've like forgotten it already. But there's something about embodying something. It's like, I suppose, when you're acting something out. So I know that when I first started out, I had to have a script and I had to, like, you know, it was excruciating. Now I have a number of bullet points and I know that I will flow through things, and I might forget something, or I might add something, or, you know, and it's being in the experience that when you take a step, this next step becomes clear as you're acting it out, or playing it out, or embodying it. So that really does make sense. But I'm like, wow, that statistic is like huge. I never knew it was that 400 to 40. Did you say?
Yeah.
Wow, that's like, that's a massive difference. And that's it, isn't it? It's like, get practicing at something and we will never be expert at anything in the first attempt.
Oh, that's for sure. That's for sure.
So we have to be willing to practice it, stumble across it. And, you know, I think people love that honesty as well. It's like, if this is the first time that you've ever stepped out and you've ever, you know, been on a Facebook Live, like, tell people, say, hey, this is my first attempt, gonna get it wrong. And like, people are and then people gun for you. They're like, yeah, come on, bring it on, like we're behind you, rather than trying to make it perfect and people going, something's not quite right here, and allowing it and being playful with it, you know.
Yeah, and that's really embracing your vulnerability, what you're talking about, right? Being like, you know, this is my first Facebook Live, you know, it's all good, and then people are rooting for you. So why not? Yeah.
Absolutely. And like, we know how well we thrive when people are behind us and they know what's really going on, and how they can be there to support us. It's truly fascinating, isn't it? Because we want to get it perfect first off the bat.
Yeah.
Like, it's not possible. And being willing to make those few mistakes. And I love that. I always talk about, business is fun. Like, we have to have fun. And if we've gone, I guess there's that knowing about how to tweak it and how to show up as us, that's going to be different for every single one of us. There's like these tools that you can help and support your clients with, and help and support your community with, around ideas of what to do. And then it's about adapting it to make it our own, isn't it? And knowing that we have those tools in our bag. So it's really hugely powerful. Yes. So is there anything else you'd like to share with the community while we're here? And if anyone's got any questions as well, I can see a couple of people are watching. So it'd be lovely to have some questions if you've got any problem in the comments. While Ali's here, what are you struggling with most of all about showing up as an introvert or as an extrovert? What is your biggest struggle in showing up? Let us know, and maybe we can support you a little bit. But is there, while we wait for maybe a comment or two, is there anything else you'd like to share, Ali?
Well, I could talk a little bit about what I do, I guess, and how my sort of membership works. So basically, we've got acting class with me. So once again, it's for non-actors. So the goal isn't to go and play a character on stage, is to use the techniques to show up in whatever environment you need to show up in, and feel confident, feel yourself, be authentic, all this good stuff we talked about. And then I also have a guest expert who comes in, who gives you a little bit more concrete stuff. So we work on interviewing skills, going live skills. So you've got kind of the balance there between sort of, I don't want to say the artistic side, but for lack of a better word, the artistic side, right? And then sort of like the brass tacks side. And then I'm also starting to do a little bit of coaching one-on-one. So in the first couple of months of the membership, I'm offering that in the membership. But who knows, maybe in the future that will be a separate offering.
Yeah. Cool. That sounds really exciting. So we're going to put the links to Ali's community membership in the link. So if that is of something of interest that you feel you need a little bit of support and a little bit of guidance about stepping out there and allowing yourself to really show up, then and seeing your introversion as your superpower, then we will pop those comments in there. So thank you, Ali. There is a comment from Amina who says, how do you stop judging yourself so much when you're in that space? Have you got any tips or thoughts about that?
That's a big one. Yeah. I would say sort of maybe go back to what we talked about a little bit ago. I think I mentioned it, right? The sort of stopping the negative thoughts, right? So the hardest part about that, I think, is the awareness, because I think we have like something between like 70 to 90,000 thoughts per day. And like most of them are repeat thoughts from the day before. So we don't even realize that we're sort of in this spiral. So when you're thinking something like, oh gosh, like I'm no good, or this is gonna be horrible, or I don't know what I'm doing, or people see right through me, something like that, just see if you can sort of train yourself to say, stop. Is this objective? Is this true? Or is this just sort of a protective mechanism I'm using kind of as an excuse to not put myself out there, right? And if it is, no judgment, right? It's just kind of recognizing that, taking a step back, saying, it's going to be fine. There's no evidence that like people will think I'm an idiot, just take a deep breath and, realize that it'll be okay. If you tell your brain it'll be okay, your brain will believe you, right? It doesn't know the difference between sort of our real reality and our pretend reality, right? That's why we can be so engaged in acting. So I would say just being aware is really the first step, and sometimes the hardest thing.
Yes. And I think that once we have that awareness, and then we're at choice, I guess, aren't we? To say, well, which story, which route do I want to keep feeding myself down and allowing myself to roll down, and then really allowing yourself. I mean, look, we are our own worst critics.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
no one out there, is there, that's judging ourselves harsher than we are. So if we think that we probably, you know, judging ourselves and then knowing that no one else is judging us in the way that we're judging ourselves is probably quite soothing as well, I think, you know. But yeah, it's one of the things that so many of us struggle with when we're putting ourselves out there, because we're taught, I guess, that vulnerability is not a good thing. Showing up and being vulnerable and honest and real is not a good thing. And you know, I think that that's the way we need to actually go now more than ever, is to show our real side.
Definitely.
And who we truly are.
And if it's the audience that's kind of freaking you out, you know, you can sort of reframe that as well. If you're giving a talk in person, see if you can chat with people beforehand, right? Or if you're going live on social media, see if you can, you know, make small talk in the comments or whatever, you know, seeing that people are just people and not like demons out to judge you is really helpful, right? And people are watching you because they want to hear your message, right? They're there for a reason, right? And when we put our focus back on our message and take it off, you know, what are people going to think? Then sort of the why comes through and the rest of it kind of falls away, right? Because usually what you're saying is super important to you. So try to focus on that.
Yeah, and Amina's got an incredible message as well, so it's really important.
Good.
To allow herself to or allow us all who've got important messages, because you know that's why we're in the Soul Inspired Leaders Group. We're inspired by soul. We have a deeper message of change that we want to create in the world, and it's even more important that we do the inner reflection, the inner work, to allow ourselves to soften that judgmental voice. So go easy on yourself, Amina, and we are rooting behind you, that's for sure, and everyone else that's watching. Ali, thank you so much. That's been really fascinating to talk about this for ages and having more tips. But yes, exactly, it's fun. So, and it has been fun, so thank you. We will Ali will pop the comments in. Any other questions, please do tag us both, and yeah, we wish you a really beautiful afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and I will see you here again next week, Wednesday 4 p.m. UK time for next week's show. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Thanks, Ali.
Bye. Thanks.